Yeah, so I guess I will go ahead and let me advance this slide. I'll just, kind of leave this one up here. This is a little bit of housekeeping about this platform Bevy that we're on. So yeah, just so you know, as you're joining us today, because we did have such a huge response in terms of people who registered, only the host and presenters will have live mics and video today, but we'll be sharing our screen. But please do use the chat. Say hello. We've got someone crashing from Brooklyn. Welcome to the party.
Amazing.
So yeah, please use the chat. Say hello. We love to hear where you're from. There also, when we get into the presentation, you'll also see in your side panel where the chat is, there's general chat where we're all kind of gabbing right now, but you'll also see there's Q&A. So when we do get into Emily's presentation, that will be the place to drop your questions so that we can make sure Emily gets those answered either during her presentation or we'll circle back to them at the end. So, so do switch over to that Q&A when we do go into the presentation. Also at the end, we'll just kind of open it up for general Q&A. Emily, whenever we can get our hands on a HubSpotter, we'll ask all kinds of questions. And we know that, you are one of many people there. So, maybe you don't, we know that you guys won't always have all the answers, but
I'll certainly try.
Yeah, we love to kind of throw those questions or, sometimes our little, wouldn't it be cool if, that up the flagpole, if you will, but
Absolutely. I'll make sure my notebook is at the ready to take notes as we go.
I love it. Thank you. Yeah, and then also, as you guys may have noticed in our agenda, we do have a little bit of a networking section. So, historically, as I've run this Boise HubSpot User Group and the kind of attendance that we would get in real life when we were still doing that, and even just the virtual hugs we had, over this last year and a half, definitely not quite as many people. So, we did always try to do a little bit of like, what your job is, sort of how you use HubSpot, your favorite things about it. So since we don't really have, since we'll have too many people to really do that today, we are going to use breakout rooms. So again, once we get really started here, I'll activate those breakout rooms and we'll put a handful of people together to have a shorter version of that with your small group and get to talk a little bit and feel like you met someone new today. And please exchange info in the rooms and stuff if you want to make some other connections with other HubSpot users. That's always good. Oh, let's see. Adina's having audio issues. Adina, I was also when I first launched Bevy today, it was a little bit finicky. I did have to do a quick restart. Maybe that won't be the case, but
it looks like she's good.
Oh, good now. Okay, perfect.
Amazing.
I did have a panic moment. Emily and I jumped on an earlier dry run because I was all of a sudden it wasn't letting me share. So of course, right when you're about to use the technology, it throws you a curveball.
It always knows when you're doing something exciting.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Okay. We've got Santiago, Chile, Spain. Oh, this is so awesome. I'm loving seeing all of our friends here from all over the world. All right. Well, we're about 5 minutes in. I do see that, people are jumping on all the time. Bend, Oregon. Awesome. Wow. India. This is so cool, you guys. So yeah, well, I guess keep saying hello as you log on, but if you're not already here, you didn't hear me say that, so that's dumb. But yeah, we'll kind of get started here. I guess we'll maybe give it just like 1 more minute. Again, if you haven't looked at the slide that I'm sharing, if you're just getting on and getting your screen situated, please take a look at this housekeeping slide that I have up, kind of letting you know sort of what to expect today from this platform. And for what it's worth, we're of course super excited to be a part of this global event. Generally when we kind of go back to smaller, localized formats, when the attendance is under 50, we are able to open it up so people can share and other people can be on screen and talk and all of that. But because we had over 100 people register, we had to launch it without that. And unfortunately, if there is a way, I am not savvy enough in the ways of Bevy yet to figure out how to do this. Even if we don't have the full, 100 people log on, I don't know that we can change it on the fly the way it's set up. So this is kind of what we get today, is you get to hear from your host and presenter today, and we'll go into a little breakout room here in a second. But other than, and then at that breakout level, you guys will have mic and all that kind of access as well. So, all right. And yes, again, please use the chat to say hello. And then once we start the presentation, toggle over where you are seeing the chat. There's general chat and there's Q&A. Toggle over there to drop your questions, and we'll make sure that those get tackled during the presentation. All right. Well, I guess we are going to go ahead and just keep moving along here. So just by way of introduction, just want to say hello and kind of introduce you to your Boise Hug team, as well as our special guest. So I'll just kind of start. I'm Lindsey Bowser. I am your Hug host. I'm the president of Tribute Media, which is an inbound marketing agency in the Boise, Idaho area. We're actually in Meridian, but because we are, I think, the only Hug in Idaho still, we just use the Boise name because everybody knows where that is. And then, I'm also a HubSpot certified trainer. I've been working in HubSpot since 2015. So that's who I am. And then Madison is our Hug administrator, and she is in a conference room in she's out front with some of our Tribute Media team. So Madison and Katie and Emery, do you guys all want to say hello?
Hi. We're just up here hanging out.
Awesome. They are sitting on the comfy couch in the front of the office. So yeah, I'll just kind of say Madison is our Hug administrator. She is kind of my right hand when it comes to running these events and making sure everything's all set up. And she's also an account manager here at Tribute Media. Katie is sitting next to her in the orange shirt, if you want to pan over.
She kept telling me no.
Katie's an inbound strategist, account manager, also has been working in HubSpot. Katie, in HubSpot?
I think it was about 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, and then Emery Pearson, say hello. She is an inbound marketing specialist in the area of search who works here at Tribute Media. So thanks for popping on there, Madison.
Of course.
So that is your Boise Hug team. And then also, of course, we have a special guest today, Emily Morgan from HubSpot. Emily, you want to say hello? I know you'll have a little intro in your presentation, but
yeah, hi everybody. I am really looking forward to this session. Just for some background on me, I've been with HubSpot since 2013, and so I just crossed my 7.5-year mark. And for the most part, I've just been designing and delivering trainings to customers across the globe for the past 6 years. So I started on our support team and really just fell in love with more of the training component of my role, and helped develop the customer training program. So if you haven't already heard of us, if you go to hubspot.com/training, that's where you can attend a lot of live training sessions with us, and you can see more of me and my team. But I'm just really excited to talk a lot today about just developing workflows and automating a lot of the stuff that we've been doing more manually in a lot of our sales processes. And it's definitely a topic that's been near and dear to my heart for a while now. So I'm excited to share with you all what I've learned myself from HubSpot and even from customers over the years. So this is going to be a great way to start off the Hug year.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. All right. So now we are going to take a moment to get to know each other. So, and again, new technology for us. So I hope this goes exactly how I'm going to describe it. But we've got about 26 people so far. I'm going to do breakout rooms probably of maybe about 4 of you, 6 of you. It'll do math for me, so that'll be fine. Yeah, I'm gonna put you into some small breakout groups for about 10 minutes. So this would be a great opportunity, as I mentioned earlier on the call, when we were meeting in person, and we do have smaller groups. We do love to give everybody an opportunity to go around and say who they are and where they work, and what they kind of do in HubSpot, sort of what is their area. It used to just be as simple as, are you a salesperson or a marketer? But now, of course, we know the HubSpot CRM platform is so much more robust. People in all facets of all organizations are using it. So you could be anybody doing anything in HubSpot at this point. So those are always just some good kind of questions to answer when you get into your little breakout rooms. What tools do you use? What are your favorite features or capabilities? Or what's something you recently learned? I love hearing people share their little light bulb moments of things that they figured out in HubSpot, whether it's something it was meant to do all along and you just mastered, some little trick, some little workaround or interesting thing that you've figured out, is always fun. So we are going to take about 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here in just a few. So again, I hope this goes exactly how I say it will. Let's see, we're going to do 3 rooms of 4. That doesn't really, no. Okay, I was like, I don't do math well, but that is not correct. Looks like it's gonna be 6 rooms of 4, or how about 4 rooms of 6? I think that will be good, a good amount of people for 10 minutes of conversation. And I've already seen a couple people drop off, like they're like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Fair enough. Hopefully they'll be back in a few minutes. All right, here we go.
So do you know how this, like, we're not in a room, so is it gonna let you pop in and out?
Yeah, so Madison, it looks like I just navigated over there. You can go join any room. So it looks like room 4 only has 4 people, but it does have Adina from our new client building solutions, and Jennifer from over at In Time Tech. So that might be a nice one for you guys to pop into.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Awesome. So for those of you who might just be hopping on, I have set up some breakout rooms where some of our folks are kind of getting to know each other. This is a new platform for us. This is our first Hug event on this platform. So I am not 100% sure what I'm doing yet. I'm looking to see if I can drop you guys into a room. It's not looking like it though. If you guys, those of you who are just kind of, who can hear me basically, means you're just sort of in the general room, and I've got some breakout rooms going. I don't know if you're able to see, but in this panel where like the attendees and chat is showing, if you can see the rooms, if you have the ability to enter a room, feel free to go pop into anyone. We're just basically spending, we have 7 minutes left in a little breakout session where people's video and audio is on in order for them to talk to each other and get to know each other and answer some of these questions that you see on the screen here. And if you guys aren't able to do that, I'll just kind of explain a little bit more to why we're taking this approach this time. Basically, we're using this new event platform called Bevy, and it is only because we had such a big response for this event, it only allows our presenters to share audio and video because we had over 100 people register, just because that gets really unruly if everybody's got their stuff on. So yeah, so looking at the chat right now, so that's interesting. Lisa, I'm seeing your chat, but I believe you're in a room. Okay, and then Meredith, you just had to drop out of a room. That totally makes sense. And I was just sharing with the other folks that have hopped on since. I don't exactly, I don't know that there's a way. I'm looking to see if I can drop you into a room, but it doesn't look like I can. So unless you guys can click on rooms and join a room, I don't know that you're able to. Again, this is a really a new platform. And I think, once, we're part of this big global event this time, we had over 100 registrants because it reached far outside the Boise area. And so, this time we're taking this approach where only the presenters have the ability to share. But when we get back to like more of the normal localized event, it'll be back to normal. I mean, we'll still be using this platform, but it will be open as long as there's less than 50 attendees. It will be open for everybody to use their video and microphone and share screens and all of that. But just because we had over 100 people register, we had to turn off that functionality for this event. So thanks for bearing with us. Like I said, I see that a few people are just logging on, so kind of missed the breakout rooms. And again, not being completely familiar with the tool yet, I don't want to shake things up by, closing the rooms and, trying to put people back in rooms. So yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out with you here and filling people in as they're jumping on. That in about 3.5 minutes, our breakout session will close and we'll all come back to this main room. And that's when we'll get our presentation from our HubSpotter, Emily, who's here. So welcome and thanks for joining us. And thanks for bearing with us as we figure out this new technology. And actually, for the benefit of those who are just hopping on and didn't make it into a breakout room, I'm going to change this slide up a little bit here, whoopsie, so that you can just kind of see some of the, information about the platform. I've kind of been babbling this stuff over the last couple of minutes, but if you're just hopping on, you can kind of see the details of this new event platform we're using. Like I said, only hosts and presenters will have mic and video today, but for those of you who will be a part of the Boise Hug long term, if this is your local hug, we do expect that attendance will be won't be quite as overwhelming when it's not promoted globally. So once we have 50 or fewer attendees or registrants, we will have that audio video function, and it will be a little bit more like a basic Zoom kind of situation. But yeah, for today, only presenters and hosts will have microphone and video and an ability to share screens. But please do use the chat in the right-hand side. Tell us where you're from. Earlier, we were all just kind of sharing, if you're reading through the chat, and like, what is everybody talking about? We were sharing some of our hobbies that we picked up over quarantine. So that's what that's all about. And yeah, but please do use the chat to say hello. And then also, if you look on the right-hand side where the general chat is, you'll also see that you can toggle over to a Q&A. And that is where we'll have you drop specific questions that you have when Emily from HubSpot is doing her presentation. We'll have you drop those in there, and that way we can make sure that she's tackling those questions either while she's presenting or at least circle back to them at the end of her presentation. And then, of course, at the very end too, we'll also just kind of open it up to general Q&A. So you'll use that section for those specific questions. Otherwise, if you just want to say hello and where you're from, we'd love to see, in the chat. Hi, Lisa. Using Marketing Hub over there at Power, I believe I know I recognize your name, and I'm pretty sure that's why, because we've met in that context. So so anyways, I think our rooms are closing and everyone's kind of coming back. So now I'm going to re-advance our slide to welcome everybody back. Hi everyone, welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a good time in their little breakout rooms, getting to know each other. I stayed in the main room because we still had new people joining us who were probably like, what the heck is going on? So Madison and the other gals from Tribute, though, did jump into a room, I believe. So
Nice.
They got a chance to chat with some of you, but hopefully that all went well for everybody and you guys met someone new and learned some cool stuff about what people love about HubSpot. So welcome back. So without further ado, we will get things kicked off over to Emily to share about how to automate the most boring part of sales.
Thank you so much, Lindsey.
So you can take over.
Awesome.
So Emily, since you started sharing, I haven't heard you and you disappeared. So from my screen, so I can't see if your audio is on. Can you say something so that we can test the audio? Oh no. Yeah, so I am seeing that you are not muted, but we don't seem to have sound for you anymore. Gotta love playing with new technology.
Okay, so I just left and come back
Okay.
to the old, restart situation. It happened, I think it happened as soon as I hit share my screen. So I'm going to try this again. And hopefully it doesn't do that one more time, but let's see. And this time I'm just going to share my whole second screen regardless. So can you hear me now? You can hear me? Oh, and I can't hear you.
I'm muted. But
sorry, thanks to everyone for holding tight as I troubleshoot the situation. I'm just gonna hit present, and Lindsey, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. And I guess this is a great opportunity for me to just like remind everybody one more time. If you've got questions as Emily's presenting, if you have the chat pulled up on your right-hand side, just toggle over to the Q&A section and start dropping your questions in there. Emily's going to take a couple of specific spots, I think, to just sort of check in and ask. But if I see something that's like super relevant to what she's talking about in the moment, I may just kind of interject if I remember to unmute myself. Interject and let you know that there's a question pertaining to what you're talking about so you can tackle it. If there's sort of uncategorized questions, we'll come back to them at the end. So
awesome. Thank you so very much. So just kicking off, you guys have already heard enough about me, but I do recommend going to HubSpot.com/training if you're looking to see more live sessions that we host. But without further ado, the whole concept of this whole session is going to be around this tool called Workflows. Workflows is HubSpot's automation tool. And I've tried to identify 10 workflows that I think would be really helpful for you all to know about. So we're going to be talking about all of those in this particular session. And if you haven't seen a workflow before, or if you're completely unfamiliar with the idea of workflows, it revolves around a lot of like this idea of like if-then statements. And any workflow that you build, it can be boiled down into two key components. I'm going to actually use the chat a little bit for this. If you were to guess like what those two main components of a workflow are, does anybody know? Can anyone share in chat what it is? And Lindsey, could you maybe let me know what you see as answers come in?
unmuting now.
Oh, thank you.
Don't forget. Yes, we've got a couple answers coming in. So Monica, condition and action. Tasha, trigger and action. John, dead or live. Katie, enrollment criteria and actions. Eduardo, target audience.
Nice. These are great. And I think a lot of them, pretty much all of those answers really get to the point with what those two pieces are. Really, when you're thinking of your enrollment, a lot of the terminology that I heard, like the word trigger, we have like target audience, like you're thinking of your segment that you want to incorporate here. So anything around like segmentation, trigger, enrollment, that's really that first main component where you're deciding what records end up in this automation that you've built, like what records get affected. And often as a part of that, that's also determining like when the workflow or when the automation begins. And that second part are all your actions. There's so many actions that you can choose from, especially now we've been really contributing a lot more actions to your workflows tool over the past few years. There's so many actions you can choose from in that library. So anything from sending emails to contacts or sending emails internally to tasks or updating properties. There's a lot you can accomplish automatically using your HubSpot tools. And as we go through each of these different workflows, just to make it a little bit more fun, we're going to use a really important metric, and that's called the Boringometer. Specifically, if you remember the title of this is automating the most boring parts of your sales process. So we want to know like how boring are these things that we're automating? So it's really on a scale from just sitting in a park. Like it's not exciting, but it's like really low on the boring scale. It's like pretty much you're content, all the way to waiting in line at the DMV. And fun fact, in between college semesters, I actually used to work at a DMV, and I can attest it can be quite boring. So, and especially very boring. So this is the scale we're going to be using as we go through each of these different items that we're going to be automating. And one of them is the idea of updating properties. There are so many properties that every HubSpot customer has within their portal. and getting values, like getting information into those properties, whether they be contact, company, deal properties. That might be manual. You might have people using forms. If it's contact properties, you might have your leads fill out forms to get data into those properties. But there might be a lot of properties that you want to have and that you want to have filled in automatically. And doing that manually is pretty boring. That's, I would say, moderately boring. But there's some properties out there that you can use that you can use workflows for to simplify the data and make it a lot easier for processing throughout other areas of HubSpot. Now, I'm going to show you an example just because it's a little bit easier to understand what I'm referencing here when you have an example. So if we think of the idea of territory assignment, from delivering trainings, I would say like most customers that I've seen often use the idea of territory to assign leads to different sales reps. So they might say that they'll assign them based off of the fact that a lead is in the Northeast or the Southwest and have those particular regions for each individual contact or company that comes through their portal. Some companies might do it in different ways, but I think this is definitely the more commonly used one. There's no right answer to this, but I do find like this particular method for assigning leads is pretty common. But one challenge around that is that we're not always going to be thinking of the idea of sales region in the sense of like individual states or individual countries. It's usually a cluster of them. For example, in the Northeast, it's not just Massachusetts. We have Massachusetts, New Hampshire, we have Vermont. There's a lot of states up there. So it becomes kind of challenging. If you wanted to reference in maybe a saved view or a list of contacts or a report of contacts or companies, you have to remember which states pertain to which sales region and know to incorporate those every single time you need to reference them in a tool that you're using in HubSpot. And it can become redundant. Same thing goes with country. Maybe you're assigning by a cluster of countries, or even more challenging, but also I want to say probably more common is a lot of people will use the idea of postal code to define that contacts are in a particular region or a particular sales region. And this one, I would say, is probably even harder because you now have to remember a whole list of postal codes that pertain to the Northeast, to the Southeast, the Southwest, the Northwest, the center. So you have all these different postal codes. So you want to try to simplify this as best as possible. And this is where your workflows can come in handy. We have this idea of enrollment, which we talked about. This decides which records end up in your automation inside of your workflow. And for this workflow, we're just going to say that we are going to only update, let's say we want to update a custom property that we've built called sales territory. It's not going to be in your portal by default, but in any portal, you can add in your own custom properties. So this fictional company created a property called sales territory or sales region, whatever you want to name it, it's custom. And their enrollment is going to be whenever a postal code is the postal codes of that particular territory. Then their action is going to be updating that custom property that they created to, let's say, Zone A. Again, it's a custom property, so you can name these drop-down options whatever you want to, but for the sake of this example, we're going to update sales territory to Zone A. This allows us to more swiftly move in other areas of HubSpot. If I wanted to build a report based off of how leads are doing in given territories, I don't have to input all of these postal codes again and again and again into the different reports that I might want to be building. All I need to do is say sales territory is Zone A. Let's build a report around the leads that are in Zone A and how they're performing. So that's a little bit around how you can simplify that data. So before I move on to the next workflow that I have, I'm just going to check in with Lindsey. Are there any questions in the chat that I could maybe answer at this time?
No questions yet. You're
amazing. Savvy group. All right. I'm going to ask for questions in between each of these workflows just to be sure that I'm not missing anything.
And yes, seriously, don't be shy. As you can see, she wants to check in, answer questions. So please drop them in there if you got them.
Thank you so much.
Lisa did just chime in the chat that they organize by client names.
Oh, nice. So based off of like maybe you have some target audiences that you're hoping to like segment off of. Is that fair?
Because sales staff owns clients.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it. So they're distinct, like after they become a client. That's how they get routed. That makes sense.
Yep.
And I think that like you can often, especially with that, as you get new leads within a certain company, you can automate off of like their email domain. So you could say like, if email contains the like the email domain of that particular client, you can also automate where new contacts that come in from those companies appropriately get routed to the right sales rep too. So that's a good one. Nice. All right, so for this next one's a bigger one and a little bit more complex. So if this is a little too complex for you, I don't get disheartened, because this is definitely one of the more advanced workflows that a lot of customers end up building. And this is the concept of using a workflow to update stages and statuses. And this one's pretty high on the Boringometer scale. Don't want to be doing a lot of data entry manually. And this pertains to things like your lead status property or your life cycle stage property. They don't want to exert a lot of energy into qualifying the leads and data and all of their contact and company records. And all of that can be something that you automate. But it's all about automating it correctly. Just automating it isn't going to be enough. You want to make sure that we are automating only qualified leads to be advancing forward throughout your sales process. So as an example, if you think of your marketing team, they might be generating a variety of leads and doing a wonderful job with that. But in any business, all of those leads that your marketing team is generating, they all naturally have varying levels of quality. You might have some leads that are absolutely amazing that need to be followed up with immediately. You might have some average leads that you're kind of unsure of, but then you also will always have these leads that just should not be moving forward to a sales rep. And if we hand over all of those leads automatically to our sales team, like the moment they enter our database, you're not going to end up with a happy sales team. They're not going to be happy to see that there's all of these different leads of different qualities, and many of them that they knew for sure that they could not sell to, or that they're a bad fit, not interested in purchasing. And what we could do instead is, instead of having all leads be sent over to the sales team, we can put in automation in that enrollment criteria. We can be really specific with that enrollment criteria. And we're also going to be kind of specific with what we call branching logic, to make sure that we are only sending forward the leads that have at least some level of known quality, that based off of your company standards, that you know for sure that these leads have some sort of potential chance of closing, and that they're not maybe interested in a job at your business, or maybe they're not an employee at your business, or that they're a bad fit for what you sell. We can try to see if there's some information we can use to really weed out any of those contacts or companies that just shouldn't be on the desk of a sales rep.
Emily, can I just jump in? Katie Fritchen in the chat is mentioning that like rolling date ranges would be the best way to like effectively automate lead status. Is that possible to use a rolling date range?
As long as the property that you're using is like a date-based property.
Yeah, so she mentions like an activity field, like last activity date.
Got it. Yes. So there is, and you might need to scroll a little bit when you're building out your conditions to see this. But if you did like last activity date, there's a few options further down that say like is less than and is more than. And those would be your two rolling date options. You could say something like last activity date was less than X amount of days ago, or last activity date was more than X amount of days ago, and use that data to segment better. That's a great question. And speaking of last contacted date or last activity date, another property that's more on the marketing side that I absolutely love, and it often gets overlooked, is the one called Send Since Last Engagement. That's a property that tells you how many marketing emails you've sent to a lead without them opening. It's a really good way to spot when somebody has like stopped paying attention to marketing emails and they just let them go into their inbox, but they never open them. So that property again is called Sends Since Last Engagement, and it's another really good one to consider when building a lead qualification workflow as well. Yeah, great question. Especially with all of those leads that we're sending across too. So you're using those conditions to determine who gets to sales, but you can also use things like lead status, so that property in HubSpot, to help your sales team determine which leads have a really high potential of purchasing and which ones you're kind of unsure of. Like you still want to send them over, they still need assistance, but for the most part, you're not really sure what level of potential or quality they have. So the two properties that I mentioned again are lead status and life cycle stage. For some context around that property called life cycle stage, it's on every contact and every company property. Every contact and company that you have. And the drop-down options that you'll see cannot be customized. Those are static drop-down properties, but they do serve a really important purpose. This is your bird's eye view. This is your high-level view of where your leads are, not just in your sales process, but in your entire process. So everything from your marketing process to the sales process to your service process, where they're an actual customer. This is a really good indicator as to which team's hands at this point in time. And I always have the customers try to map out not only the definitions, like how they define each of the drop-down options, but to also think about how they move from one option to the next. So not just the definitions of each item, but what is that trigger that should move them from one to the next? And there are some out of the box automation built right into this idea of lifecycle stage. In particular, the tail end, like this ending of lifecycle stage, is already automated for you by default. If you are opening HubSpot deals and then closing those HubSpot deals, this is already happening without you having to build a single workflow. We have a setting in place that recognizes when you open a deal, and it automatically changes all of your contacts and companies to opportunities for you. Then if those deals are closed won, it will also automatically move them from opportunity to customer for you without you having to build, again, a single workflow. That setting can be turned off. So if that is not what you want to happen, you can also turn that setting off. But this is already built. You don't have to build a single thing. What's different is the beginning portion. The first three that you see here, that beginning portion is different for every business. Every business defines this idea of quality completely different from one another because we all sell very different things. So this idea of quality has to be different for all of us. And some recommendations that I would give you around determining what the difference is between lead and marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead is that my hint is always to think of the difference between these two as leads that are qualified by a system. Like no human is reviewing this lead manually and determining if it moves forward. You would have more like a workflow that checks a few boxes to determine did this lead meet these conditions? If so, let's move them forward. So you have a workflow taking that list of all the leads that you generate off of your website and from events, and it narrows it further automatically without a person having to look at it at all. Then from there, the transition from MQL to SQL usually involves some sort of manual lift by a person, whether that be a BDR, a sales rep, an administrator, but somebody is actually really manually looking at those leads and determining if they should now move forward to SQL. So automated by a system from here to here, and then automated by a person from MQL to SQL.
A quick question. So Michelle is asking that if you've customized the deal flow, does the opportunity / customer change still automatically happen?
If you've automated the deal flow, I'm thinking that that's in reference to if you've modified deal stages.
Yeah, that's how I'm kind of reading it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So HubSpot still knows when you have a deal stage called close one. Mm-hmm. So as long as there's a closed one, there might even be some messaging in deal settings around needing to have a closed one stage. But so long as you have a closed one stage and that there's percentages on each individual deal stage, like probabilities. And so long as you have one called close one and that the probability is at 100%, I believe that you should be good to go. If you've deleted the default close one that's in there, it might be worth just maybe checking with our support team because I'm not 100% sure what would happen if you remove that stage and tried to add it back in. But it really just relies on having that one stage. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'll let Michelle say it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tracking with what you're saying too, in terms of maybe even just test. I might even just go test that myself now. Deleting a closed one property, but calling it something else, but setting it at 100% and see if that 100% does the the heavy lifting because I've never tried that.
Yeah,
But Juan has, and he said, yes, it works. Okay, wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you.
Juan, by the way, I saw your question too, and I'm going to come back to that at the end because I think that's just a really good general question. So.
Yeah. Also, just for time, Lindsey, how much time do we have left?
So it's 4:15. So I was planning for you to go until about 4:45 with questions. So you're good.
Perfect.
I mean,
That's
I think
amazing.
you're good. I don't know how much longer you have to go.
No, I think we're on track. So just for this, I'm also going to recommend, so there's like two different parts of your automation here. If you wanted to automate like that sales movement from taking MQLs, looking at them, determining if they should be an SQL, I find that a lot of customers have a better time if they build the workflow that when lead status is changed, which is again a different property than lifecycle stage. Lead status is one that you can customize to just have whatever drop-down state, like whatever drop-downs you need. That one is already, the property is already in your portal, but all of the drop-downs can be changed to whatever you need them to be. So I've seen a lot of, sorry.
I'll just jump in. That was kind of Juan's question. And it's just one that I've sort of always had too. I don't know that you even know the answer, but it's like, why is it that life cycle stage is like non-negotiable, but we can customize our lead statuses?
That is a beautiful question, and one that I definitely get a lot. So historically, and even to this day, there's some reports in HubSpot that are like so heavily tied to what these stages are. And in order for those reports to function appropriately and to give you the right data, they do have to have the dropdowns be this like standardized version of these life cycle stages. So that's really the main reason why, is that it ties pretty heavily into we have a funnel report that shows you like the conversions between each of these steps. I don't know if they are going to maybe change that in the future, but at least as from what I know of our current state, they are still going to be static, but primarily because of reporting purposes.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, definitely an age-old question. But I think that's where lead status is really important to know about, just because that does help you unlock that more customizable part of your sales process. And what I'll typically do is have the transition from, let's say, a lead status of like new lead to connected. I'll use that as my, like, to trigger a workflow that would move them from MQL to SQL. So usually use lead status as my trigger from here to here. But the bigger question, and typically the more complex workflow, to be honest, is this transition from lead to MQL, because you're really having to build out a workflow that can understand what quality means without a human doing that qualification for it. You need to like build a workflow that can truly understand those qualifications and build criteria that reflects that. And it can be challenging. And there's so many different ways to build this. Like there's no like one right answer. But what I've found is there is a way that I think has been easier for a lot of the customers that we've worked with to not just build initially, but also to sustain as people come and go from their company. I think that's also a big challenge too with automation, is people come and go. That's a very natural movement in any organization. And you want to ensure that some of the automation that you build doesn't require a heavy lift to modify if somebody is new to your business. I'm going to walk through this. It's going to be a little intimidating at first glance. But this is one thing that I think can help a lot of people conceptualize their qualification workflow, map it out, and really understand how to build it and how to sustain it. So we're going to break this down piece by piece. But first, in this Venn diagram that we have up here, what I would recommend is having a list of contacts that meet all of those like good fit conditions that you have, those conditions that you know for sure are like make somebody like a perfect, beautiful fit for the type of products or services that you sell. And you're going to build that list. The other thing you're going to do is build a completely separate list of anybody who's really raised their hand. We call them sales ready actions. You might also hear them called triggers. You might hear them called hand raisers. But this would be like those list of people who've raised their hand and maybe requested a quote, requested a demo, requested a consultation, whatever it might be. They put their hand in the air and said that they want to talk to your team. So you have these two lists. And the cross section of these two lists, this Venn diagram area right here, these are those fire leads that you know your sales team needs to talk to immediately. and that they need to put a lot of effort and prioritization into this group of leads. So the output of doing this is you end up with 3 different groups, and you can figure out how you want to handle those 3 separate groups. So you might have people who are only in this list and maybe not in this list. I'm going to move forward just so we can see this. We have people who are only in the good fit list, but not in the sales ready action list. They have not raised their hand. You can separately think about, what do I want to do with that group of people? They're a good fit, but they haven't told us that they want to talk. How do we want to treat those people? What should their life cycle stage be? What should their lead status be? What team is responsible? How do we want to let that team know that they're responsible? How do we want to alert them? Do we want to actually even alert them at all? Or do we want to, maybe for these good fit leads, maybe there's more of a saved view that they can comb through and pull leads from a pool of leads? And what speed do we want them to follow up with? The most important part of the group to consider here are these hot leads. From this group, the people who are in both of these 2 lists, this group here, I would say that they should be either in MQL or in SQL if you want to take them straight to SQL. But what's most important, I think, is using your lead status. You could customize your lead status to have one be new hot lead or new 2-hour priority lead. You can customize that to be a more higher level priority. And then maybe for the other 2, you just have them called new. So you have your generic new leads, but then in the middle, maybe you have a lead status that's 2-hour follow-up new lead. Just something that represents that this is a lead that they need to follow up with immediately. You want to, again, list the team responsible, how they get notified, and what's the speed of follow-up. And this last group is anybody who did raise their hand, but they are not on this good fit list. If they're a bad fit, but they've raised their hand, that's still somebody that you got to talk to. That's still somebody that your team needs to respond to, but maybe you don't put your best sales reps on those particular leads. Maybe you have somebody else review that lead further, connect with them, and determine if they are actually truly a bad fit for what you sell before determining if they should move forward or backwards. And what I would recommend doing for this particular workflow, your enrollment would be actually being a part of either of these 2 lists. You would say they're in this hand raiser list or they're in this good fit list. You would enroll really everybody who's in either of those 2 lists. And then you would use something called branching logic to split into these 3 groups. And branching logic is something I would say is definitely more advanced. So if you're very new to workflows, I probably wouldn't recommend diving straight into this particular workflow. This is definitely a more advanced workflow to build, but still really valuable to start thinking about and start maybe trying to plan it out and build it on your own and get ready for launch. But branching logic is what I would use to divide into these 3 categories and then build out separate actions for those 3 categories so I could treat these 3 groups pretty differently. That one was definitely a hefty one. Lindsey, do we have any questions in the chat around this particular workflow?
Not just yet. There are a couple of good topics for kind of wrapping things up, but yeah.
Oh, perfect. Nice.
Keep rolling.
Awesome. All right, so this next one is around the idea of lead assignment. So it does definitely go hand in hand with the concept of lead handoff and moving leads forward and qualifying them, is actually determining whether or not who they should actually go to. And this one's pretty high, especially if you're on a sales team or you're in sales enablement and you have to do this single lead. That can be really cumbersome. And it's also another component that can be automated. And so for anybody who is new to HubSpot, just so you're aware, on all of the record types that we have, I just have 4 different records on the screen right now. We have contact that are records of individuals, companies are records of organizations, deal records are the records of a potential sale that you're working. And you might have multiple deals for individual companies. And tickets are more like customer service tickets, support tickets. But once they're a customer, you usually use tickets to keep track of different queries that your customers might raise to your team. But on each of those records, they will always all have their own owner property, like contact owner, company owner. And you can use automation to set that to a particular person or a particular team. So there's 2 different actions that you want to consider here. If I take ourselves back to when we're talking about sales territory, I'm going to say the Northeast. If you just have one sales rep who owns all of the contacts that are in the Northeast, First off, they're probably very busy. But if you have one sales rep who is owning all of the contacts in the Northeast, you don't need to like rotate amongst a group of people. You could just set their contact property of contact owner. You could just set that to whoever owns all of those contacts in the Northeast. Whereas if you know you had 5 sales reps who are all kind of evenly splitting all of the leads in the Northeast, you want to use a different action, which is called rotate leads. And that'll help almost like dealing out a set of cards. You can deal out leads evenly to the 5 people who are within that region as well. So that's definitely something worth considering. And you also don't need to just have one owner property. I'm going to go backwards just real quick. We have contact owner, company owner. If you wanted to have not just contact owner to represent who the sales rep is, but you also wanted a CSM owner or account manager owner, you can add in your own custom owner properties. If you did that, you want to go to your settings. So if you don't know how to get to the property settings to add in, I'm mentioning a lot of like custom properties. You want to go to settings, which is this little gear at the top right of every portal. Then you're going to click properties. Once you're in settings, it's in the menu of all the settings you can choose from. And you can create new properties or edit existing properties all from that menu. And if you wanted to create your own custom owner property in addition to the existing ones, you would create a new one, and the field type that you would choose from is called HubSpot User. And that will mean that all of the drop downs that you have to choose from when you have this property created, it will always be populated with whoever is a user in your HubSpot portal. So it's just another way of creating an additional owner property if you need to have more than just a sales owner. All right, so our next one is following up with leads. This one is not actually going to be managed with the workflow at all, but it is quite high on the Boringometer scale. It takes a lot of effort, not only to follow up with leads, but even just to remember to follow up with the right leads at the right time. And outside of our workflows tool, there's one other tool that we can use for automation called sequences. And this is a little bit different because it is not automating everything in bulk and in scale. This is intended to automate the emails that you send one-to-one. So if I'm one sales rep sending emails to one person, it helps me automate that specific relationship from one person to one person. So if you had 3 emails that you use to try to get somebody to book a meeting with you or just try to connect with you in some capacity and reply, you can use a sequence to automatically send these 3 emails. Or you might even ingrain like a few tasks into the same automation. So it might automatically send these first 2 emails, and then it will automatically build a task for you to remember to call that person. And then it will automatically send another email and then automatically send another task after that. But the beauty of this type of automation is that it will automatically shut down the moment they reply. So the moment somebody replies to you, the whole thing shuts down. And that's because if somebody replies to you, you want to make sure that what you're saying and it is in response to them is actually relevant to what they just said, and not just sounding like a canned message. So it shuts down the moment they reply. It also shuts down the moment they send you an email, whether it's like the person who started the sequence or even just anybody in their account. If they send an email, that also shuts the whole sequence down, just because if somebody sent you an email, again, you want your response to be based off what they said in that email. If your contact books a meeting, if you manually unenroll them, if they unsubscribe from your sales email, if they left that company that they were originally at and maybe their email doesn't exist anymore, if their email address bounces rather, then it will shut down the whole sequence. And lastly, if your sales rep at your company maybe moved to a different department or they left your business, then it will shut down the sequence. If they're no longer a user in that HubSpot portal, we don't want a sequence being sent out from them. So we'll also use that action to shut down the sequence. But I would highly recommend doing this. It is a really good way to stay on top of your follow-up and to not forget when to call somebody, when to email somebody, and to let the HubSpot sequences tool do a lot of that heavy lifting for you of just trying to get somebody to respond to you. Because that can take up to like 5 to 20 times to get somebody to respond to you. I know I have a few sales reps in my own inbox trying very hard. And I imagine that they're using some sort of sequence as well to continually try to message and try to connect. So I would recommend trying this if you haven't already. It lives under Automate and Sequences in your portal. Another area, so if you are also, maybe you don't have sales professional or you don't have sales enterprise, you might actually have access to another area where you can automate the creation of tasks. And this one's pretty high up there. I would say on like lower level of the high block that we have here. Creating tasks is something that can take some time because you want to enter in the information about your task. And it's helping you prevent things from falling through the cracks. But you always have to do something in relation to the task. So that's why I put it pretty high up there. And tasks are something that can be automatically built without your sales rep having to click anything. Using your automation in your deal pipeline, you can use the movement from one deal stage to another stage as your action that fires off automation. So if I am a solar panel company and I'm just trying to sell solar panels to businesses, and I move a deal from engineer on-site scheduled to engineer on-site completed, I can actually build a workflow pretty easily just because it's built right into your settings. It's a little bit easier than a traditional workflow. You can build a workflow that automatically creates tasks or changes a property, maybe sends an internal email or an external email, but you can use a workflow to automate those things.
As a point of clarification too on that, Emily, so Katie had a question here earlier in the chat about an action.
Oh, Lindsay, I think I'm losing you a little bit. You're kind of breaking up. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you okay?
Okay. Okay, now I can hear you. Okay, good too.
Okay, so and you can even like hop in if you. Katie Fritchen had a question around a workflow to associate.
Oh no. Oh, Lindsay, I think I keep missing right when you start describing the workflow, and I'm so sorry. Can you, I don't know if I can hear you. Lindsay, I might actually have you, if you wouldn't mind emailing me that question, just so I don't forget about it. But you guys can hear me okay? Hold on, I'm gonna move away from this
I can
slide.
hear you great. So it must be the internet in our office because I see Madison's going in and out too.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you can hear me, but if you can, would you mind just emailing me that question?
Yes, I will. And I'll also respond to Katie's question in the chat.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that I also can't see the chat while I'm in presenter view. Thank you. Just to point out like kind of where that deal stage automation is, this is also a really good spot to start at if you are brand new to the idea of workflows, because with this, we have like this really nice simple UI if you are in your deal settings. So if you go to settings, objects, and deals, that takes you into your deal settings. And there's a specific tab just for automation. So you go to pipelines and then automation, and it has a column for every deal stage that you have. So every milestone that you have for your deals, it has a column for that. And you can really simply just click create workflow, and you can just add in all the actions that you want to happen the moment a deal moves from one stage to the next stage. So it's a really great way to build out that type of automation. I'm going to move ahead to this next one. This one is the idea of lead hand back, which for the most part just like completely breaks this whole scale. No sales rep wants to spend time moving leads in the opposite direction. They really only want to spend time moving leads forward. So that's why it's super boring for any sales rep to have to do. But this typically happens when if we're thinking of this progress bar that we have here across life cycle stages. This typically happens when the sales rep receives the lead, however you deem that appropriate to do. But the sales rep receives the lead, looks at them, and maybe it's after they've connected with them or they've looked this lead up online, but they've determined that this lead is not appropriate for them to invest time in selling to, and they want to send this lead backwards to marketing. And it is still important that we come up with processes to help the sales rep really quickly and easily send a lead backwards. Because the alternative is that that lead doesn't end up being nurtured by anybody. That lead ends up just kind of sitting in the ether of your database, being unnurtured. Like sales rep isn't taking care of them, marketing is not taking care of them. So it's really helpful if you create a way for your sales rep to, like, within 1 or 2 clicks, just send that lead back. And in order to implement a process like this, you would need to create either your own handback reason property, like your own custom drop-down property for that. Or I have seen a lot of businesses also incorporate them into their lead statuses. So really either one, I would try to keep your own sales team in mind and figure out which of those would be best for their daily actions. But you could either create your own property, like a separate one, or just add them as additional options in your lead status property. And then you want to identify what are those drop-down options, like what are those options that you want to be going through. You might have bad timing 6 months, bad timing 9 months, bad timing 1 year, low budget, they're outside your selling region, they're a bad fit. There's a lot of reasons why you might identify that somebody should not move forward in the sales process. And for one thing, this is super helpful for reporting. If your marketing team has access to be able to report on why leads that they've sent over to the sales team are being sent back to them, it can help them like really add more quality to the leads that they're sending forward, make adjustments, iterate on that lead handoff procedure, and make sure that they're making sure only the best leads move forward. So you'd want to build out all of these different drop-down options. And from there, your second step would be to automate based off of the particular handback reasons that you want to use to reintroduce them back into marketing, or maybe eventually reintroduce them back into the sales process in the future. So I'm going to give you one example. We're going to use one of those drop-down options called bad timing 6 months. If a sales rep is talking with a lead, that lead is like hard passing and saying like, dude, not the right time. Maybe 6 months from now, we'll have the time to do this, but not right now. That sales rep could take that lead that they just received and change that lead status to bad timing 6 months. And you would have a workflow in place that says, okay, when handback reason is bad timing 6 months, we're going to send them maybe a few marketing emails over the course of 6 months. You see, like on the second month, we send a marketing email, not a sales email, because we just want to respect the time that they told us to leave them alone for. But then after a 6 month long workflow, at the very end of it, we have a task that's automatically built to whoever the sales rep is at that time, which is also really key to do it this way, because then if the sales rep changes, whoever this is the sales rep at that time, then gets a task for them to reach out, talk to this lead again, see if now is the right time or a good way to reintroduce themselves. So I'd highly recommend building this kind of like lead handback procedure. Moving forward to this next one, when you are opening deals, let's say that lead, instead of being handed back, they keep moving forward and they make it to a point where that sales rep says, okay, it's time to open a deal with them because we're talking about pricing, we're talking about products, this person has the right authority, there's some potential that this could be a real customer. So you open a deal, but not every deal like moves steadily forward. Not every deal has the velocity that we would hope to see. And so this one's pretty high. Like I think a lot of people here, like in any sales organization, can relate to the idea of having deals that just get stuck, that they end up taking a certain amount of time that's a lot longer than what you would expect. And this is also defined really differently. Like there's a lot of different ways to determine that a deal has gone stale. But I'm going to show you a screenshot of what it looks like to build a workflow that would automatically send a sales rep a notification the moment that deal has gone stale. So our enrollment for this, like we would build out logic that identifies when it's gone stale. And our action typically would be to let the deal owner know that deal has gone inactive, like to send an email, maybe create a task to reach back out or to do something that would get this deal moving again. For this enrollment condition, it's a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to break this down into why we use these 3 different options. This first condition is saying that if the deal stage has not changed in a while, to trigger this workflow and send an email internally. So if the deal stage hasn't changed in the past 30 days, let's send an email internally. Or you could say if the close date has passed by, whenever a sales rep creates a deal, they always will put in a close date. So we're essentially saying this date is now in the past. This date has gone by. Let's trigger this email. And if create date is more than 90 days ago, if you know on average your deals close within 60 days, either lost or won within 60 days, and now it's 90 days, that deal is taking longer than usual for your team. So you could also use the lifespan of the deal as another trigger to send a notification that a deal has probably gone stale. So all three of those, you can say if any of those, and when I say any of, you're going to be using ORs just to say if they do any of these three things, then send an internal notification or an internal task, send something to maybe a manager or a coach or something like that. But you want somebody to be paying attention to when those deals go stale. Right, and so with that too, let's say it didn't go stale. Let's say maybe it did go so stale that we decided we got to close loss this deal. It's a lost cause. Let's not exert any more effort into it. That's not to say that the deal is permanently dead or that you can't attempt later on in the future. The people that you're talking to at companies change, and there's always potential that there's an opportunity again for you in the future. But this can be challenging if you don't have the right data in place to determine whether or not you're able to win back a closed loss deal. So again, let's say you you had an opportunity open, like you had a deal open and it just did not go well. That deal did not win. By creating a few more properties in your portal, you can create some automation that will help you reintroduce those deals again in the future. And this is something different than hand back. This is more of something we would call a win back campaign. Going into all of those closed loss deals that you have and finding ways to reintroduce them in the future. There's a couple things to know about in order to make that happen. You have to add some clarity to the way in which you close loss your deals to make this work correctly. So if we say that, let's say you have a closed loss reason property, this is actually in here by default. This closed loss reason property is just a single line text field. Your sales team can type like whatever they want in here. So for that reason, I would recommend also adding in something called like closed loss reason category, primarily for automation and reporting purposes. Trying to automate off of a single line text field where a sales rep can just write whatever they want and just take notes in here is going to be really challenging. So if in addition to that, you create your own closed loss reason category property that's drop down select, it standardizes the answers that your sales team can give you and can help you build automation to maybe reach out in a year whenever, maybe if you sell contract based products, you could say on average contracts in our industry are about a year. Then you can set up automation that starts maybe just shy of that year mark to try to sell to them again. Also, to be able to report based off of common closed loss reason categories is valuable to any sales team as well. All right, with a few more minutes left, I'm going to cover some final workflows. This last one, we would have to introduce a completely new metric system. This is the sadometer, because the story that I'm about to tell you is very sad, but it can be changed from sad to an opportunity. So this particular one involves, let's say, a fictional company. They sell consulting services. And this is one of their customers. This is a company record. And they have 4 contacts within that company. And this customer has a CSM, and his name is Ben. And Ben has been working with this customer for quite some time now. And in particular, at this customer's business, there is one champion who has been working very closely with Ben. She's really championed for their services within the organization and made sure that they stay a customer. But, Celeste, this person here, Celeste, she's done an amazing job at her business, and she's actually left and joined another business. She had another opportunity somewhere else. And while Ben is very sad, this can result in an actual opportunity for the business that Ben works at. So what I would recommend you do, I apologize for saying, you're gonna have to add another custom property, but this can really help you with your automation. I think that it's really good to have a property on all of your contact records that specifically defines whether or not somebody has actually left the company. This could also just be a lead status if you wanted to be a lead status, or maybe a customer status. But by having this property in place, you can say that when, let's say, Ben goes in, checks off that she's left the company, maybe adds a note to her contact record just to add in some information about her departure from that business. But the action of Ben checking off this box here could result in a workflow. So we could have a workflow that's triggered by this property being checked off. And that could let a salesperson know that there's something that they should dig into. So we could have a task automatically created where a sales rep tries to determine what Celeste's new company is. Also tries to figure out whether or not that new company that Celeste is at, whether or not that's a real, like that's an actual customer right now. And if they're not a customer, the sales rep should be connecting with Celeste and seeing what they can do to try to make them a new customer and really get an opportunity out of the situation. And if all goes well and our sales rep here sells to Celeste, then Ben could maybe be their CSM again, and they could keep moving and keep working on maybe the consulting services that Ben sells. But just because a champion of yours leaves the company that they're at doesn't mean that it's a completely a loss, that you might even be able to acquire an opportunity out of that. I'll also say if after this sales rep is working really hard to sell to Celeste, that maybe she does become a customer, and that's wonderful. But this particular sales rep, maybe they worked really, really hard to close that deal. Maybe they spent a lot of time. There are many months involved there. One other thing to consider is that your sales team wants it to feel amazing when they close a deal as closed won. It should feel like that. And yes, that is a GIF of me at HubSpot headquarters doing the Rocky dance. But they should feel this way. It should feel super exciting when you close a deal. But especially now that we're all living in a virtual world, when you close a deal, you maybe move it to close one, and then nothing really exciting happens. But you can make something exciting happen. There's a lot of different things that you can trigger. We have a lot of actually like new integrations with the workflows tool, but one that I've seen sales teams use is the integration with Slack. So whenever a deal is closed, maybe it introduces an exciting celebration into a Slack channel, or it shares a song like "We Are the Champions" in a Slack channel as well. Using the Slack integration, you can actually do something like this, where when a sales rep moves a deal to close one, it highlights maybe some information about the deal that they closed one automatically without a manager having to do a thing. And you can even incorporate GIFs, Spotify links to songs for people to celebrate and play. So there's a lot you can do. And I really appreciate you guys all listening as we talked through a lot of these different workflows. These are the workflows that we've discussed today. And we've only kind of scratched the surface with those. Again, if you are interested in learning more, I would definitely talk to either me or Lindsey. We both have a lot of different ways to help you get up and running with a lot of these workflows. But I would say just like try to build your first workflow, like just play with it and maybe have a workflow that only sends an internal email to yourself. It's such a good way to test a workflow. If you have one that just sends an email internally to you personally, is a great way of doing that. But overall, I just had a great time, like also connecting with you all in that networking session. And I appreciate your energy in watching this session. And I really hope that it's helped you. But again, thank you. This is one of my favorite PowerPoint animations. But thank you so much for joining. And I really appreciate your time, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. We did have a few other questions kind of pop up that I think we can revisit really quickly now.
Yeah.
So yeah, about the time you were looking at the workflow where you were assigning to a salesperson, Lucila had a question about like, what if it's not just a sales rep, but a business unit? So I actually, to be honest, haven't played that much with teams. Are you able to like assign it by team?
Yeah, so you can rotate by team. So you could say if you have, we'll call them the Northeast team. I keep using Northeast because it's just where I am. But if you have the Northeast team and that is listed as a team in HubSpot, one of the rotate leads options does say you can rotate between a team of people. So if there's a distinct set of them, you don't have to manually enter who's in that team. You could just always have it be set to Northeast team, and it rotates among whoever happens to be in that team.
Okay, so it would still only be assigned to one sales rep within that team. So I guess like if you really truly wanted to assign it to a complete business unit, you'd almost have to make that business unit like a user in HubSpot by like a
That's a
shared
good question.
email or something like that, like a you know, say like sales at or
Right. I'm thinking, I mean, everything, a lot of the things, the answers that I come to are also from testing as well. But there might be a way to also even like restrict, I know that you can restrict access by team. So that's one thing, is that you can have it be that sales reps are only able to even just see the leads that belong to their team as a whole. So I would believe that there's probably some automation we could run. I apologize that I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think that there would still be some automation you could run where it's assigned to a team as a whole rather than just one individual person, especially since we have that partitioning in HubSpot where you can say, I only want this particular user to only be able to see the leads that belong to the team that they're in. And that would be under user permissions. So that's in settings, and then users and teams. And then from there, you can set up that type of partitioning where they can only see the leads that are in that particular team's ownership, which makes me think, I think you could probably do that then.
yeah,
I need to do some testing on that particular part.
Like, it seems on the surface like it should be something that's possible based on other things I know are possible, but
Yeah.
Also, a quick question from Eduardo, just when you were talking about sequences.
Yes.
Is it more likely that emails may arrive in a spam folder of a contact if you're using sequences, or is it pretty much the same as sending emails directly?
That's a great question. I think
I
because
have an opinion based on like experience.
Do you want to go first? You can go first.
I mean, I will say that there have been a handful, it's definitely not the most common, but like a handful of times where I've maybe been emailing back and forth with somebody outside of HubSpot. Maybe they like reach out to me, or, you know, for whatever reason, I break the rules. I tell everyone else to follow. It happens sometimes. But the first time I just send them any email from HubSpot, whether it's through automation or not, like they might not get it that first time. Again, it's only been a handful of people, so I have to think that they just must have like more sensitive than usual like spam filters or something that's like detecting that it's coming from software and not, you know, right from my Gmail account. But I would say I don't necessarily have an experience to base an opinion on saying, oh, but if it's a sequence, it's more likely than sending it from HubSpot CRM or whatever.
Right. I think you also hit on something big there, that like the first emails tend to do a lot better just because there's no sender reputation. I'm sorry, not better. I said that wrong. Yeah. Sorry. It's the end of the day here in Boston. So if you have a good sender reputation, and if they're already opening your marketing emails from your company's domain, then when you send an email from a sequence, that domain is recognized, and so it has a higher chance. So if you can get a good base with marketing, and you have that, I think that would definitely help. Also, Juan just mentioned that if you customize your sequences, that will definitely help deliverability. And I think that's true of even just how it's personally received as a human. We've all seen it. Like when people send a canned email, they can sniff a canned email from a mile away. They know that it's not personal. So when you are enrolling someone in a sequence, because you manually push them into a sequence, you have an opportunity to do some tweaking. You can change the verbiage, which is unlike a marketing email that you send from a workflow. When it's in a sequence, you can change the verbiage in the moment. You can adjust, course correct, and then send it out. So that customization definitely helps from like a technical deliverability sense, but also really in how well that person is receiving the information, and how like it helps them figure out whether or not your email is legit or if it's actually just like a canned copy paste email. So that's definitely a big one.
We also, just a question came up, throughout some of the workflow examples you were giving. Like a lot of times, I know you were, mostly talking about workflows from the marketing side, just because those were kind of the original and they're the most most robust way to build a workflow. But if you wanted to just take a second to talk about, we touched on it a little bit in deals, like there is automation built into every hub now. It's not just Marketing Pro. You get that in service with ticketing and in sales with deals. I don't know if you have like a sweeping statement to kind of make about, how you choose. If you do have access to Marketing Pro, when do you decide to use your marketing automation versus automation that's built into different pipelines? Or I don't know. I'll stop.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great question. I think having a handoff procedure helps you know when to use what. So if you have leads that are pre-handoff that are in the hands of your marketing team, and then there's a distinct like key moment that triggers them over to the sales team, I'll usually say when they're in the hands of your marketing team, you use the marketing emails and they're sending. Maybe you can still have like the sender name, like the email address, be a sales rep's name or whoever that sales rep could. But I think it's best like when it's in the hands of the marketing team that they hone in on that part of the journey and that they take care of that process of warming up the leads with that more like low touch model. And then once it's time that you have that handoff procedure, that it distinctly does switch into the hands of the sales rep. You can even go as far as saying that once a lead transitions past that handoff, once their life cycle stage is a certain level or their lead status is a certain level, that you actually suppress them from marketing emails, that you say like, okay, in my workflows, I'm going to suppress people who are in the sales process. In my regular email sends, I'm going to suppress people who are in the sales process. So that way you're really putting all the responsibility on the sales rep to own the whole conversation and not let it get disrupted by any like promotions or events or anything that might disrupt or distract from the sales process. So that can often be helpful. Or if the sales team needs more help, it can be a collaboration between the two, but that is one way of just kind of shutting down the sales process, the marketing once they're handed off. So I use a kind of a more binary approach to it. And if you have that approach down, I would recommend looking into account-based marketing. Like once you have a good handoff procedure, then using account-based marketing to highlight and bring to the surface those really key target companies that you're really hoping to sell to, layering in on top of a lead handoff procedure, that idea of account-based marketing can also be really helpful.
So were you peeking at the Q&A to know that?
No, wait, did we get one?
So yeah, Juan actually had a question about just if you had any cool ABM automation workflows that you wanted to recommend.
That is a great one. So automation, it definitely goes hand in hand with ABM. There's the manual part of ABM is like first just defining the names of companies that you want to go after. Like that's key. Like what are the logos and companies that would be like a shining star and helping get you references and show the status of your own business. But you can also think of if there's some sort of like just not specific to like individual companies, but if there's certain like conditions of a company that would be perfect for your organization, like what makes a company the best for what you sell and what would make a company have an incredible time with what you sell, and trying to identify those accounts. And you could use criteria. If you can gather this type of information from forms, you could find those criteria for best fit and use that to mark someone as target. But then also having a separate workflow that identifies if somebody has a certain website domain in their email address, so that way they get flagged immediately as a target account. Those would be my main first two. But how you handle them and how you market to them is always going to be a collaboration of both marketing and sales. Like it's not meant to be one team or the other. It's supposed to be both. It's like the truest form of sales and marketing alignment and putting your business's alignment to the test, but having that focus group of people who are in charge of getting those target accounts, like that's going to also be really critical. I've seen companies create workflows that are just for specific target accounts. Like if Benjamin Moore, like their paint company, like if that's the company that like would do amazing, they might build a workflow that is just for Benjamin Moore. And like they design it solely for contacts that they get from Benjamin Moore to try to help them. So can be extremely high touch. It can go from high touch to extremely high touch, but that's the intent behind account-based marketing. Is it is meant to be high touch and needs both marketers creating content for Benjamin Moore and sales reps in charge of talking to Benjamin Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to put it. I mean, those were some that came through, while you were
Thank you.
presenting, some specific to that, but I think good, general overall questions as well. But we did kind of run it to the bell, but
Oh, thank you.
have any other like kind of general burning desire kind of questions that they want to pop into the Q&A before we wrap up? I don't see any. I will say, Eduardo followed up kind of on the whole open rate emails with the emails that come through a sequence, not so much. It's hard to say. I mean, it could be subject line, but if Eduardo creating the lines for those, what you're doing. So, it is hard to say, but I would say, especially if it's marketing automated email, and you're getting a good open rate, I definitely couldn't figure out any sort of technical difference between like a sales automation and a marketing email, like in terms of, what an email client on the receiving end is going to see that would like make one have not as good deliverability as the other. So, I mean, I do wonder if it's just a really crappy coincidence.
Yeah, I think two things there. I would definitely recommend our support team. What I can also do is, I think, why don't you follow the Boise Hug is my first thing. And why don't I do some digging? And then if I can get you a good answer to maybe why that's happening, I'll post it in the Boise Hug room so we can look back at that. So definitely give a follow so you can see if I can figure out the answer, I'll be sure to post in the Boise Hug group about that.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So yeah, to what she's talking about, if you don't already, we have a group on LinkedIn, the Boise Hug. In fact, if I can, I'll see if I can drop the link in here really quick. Yeah. So, go ahead and join our hug. Even if you're not here locally and you don't end up sticking around, at least follow it for a period of time. So we might be able to follow up on some of these questions. Another great reason to do that is I'm going to be communicating through there. For those of you who didn't get the memo already, because you are part of this really cool global hug situation, the 75 hugs in 5 days, HubSpot is going to be offering up some cool swag. So we don't have the link for that just yet. There were some delays, I guess, or some issue, but we're going to get a link for you guys to get some swag. So you won't want to miss that. So make sure you get this link here. Of course, like while I'm trying to talk and find something, I forgot how to use LinkedIn. So an extra minute here to grab this group link, but I will throw it in the chat. Putting it in the chat now. Okay. Anyway, so yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Please do check out that LinkedIn group for some follow-ups on this. Also, since you registered, you will get a follow-up email with the recording. I will also include that swag link in there as well, because I know you want your swag. Who doesn't? And yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate everybody inside and outside of the Boise area who joined us today. And of course, Emily with HubSpot, thank you so much for your time. Yes, and as far as the Boise HubSpot User Group, for those of you who belong and have come before, we'll be keeping you updated on our next hug. For those of you who are Tribute Media clients who maybe aren't in the Boise area who have joined you today, as long as we are doing this virtual, we want to invite people to just keep joining us. So thanks again. And then, yeah, Madison is just saying, yep, we'll do a post-event email. Yes, thank you everyone for joining all over the world. I think that is all we've got. We've run, some of you are way past 5 o'clock.
I know.
Boise, we're sitting at 5:03, so I see people dropping off, like we're cutting into happy hour.
I think I saw somebody even from India, so that's like 3 a.m.
Yeah, London. Yeah. So this has been really, really fun getting to see everybody. Oh yeah, Lucila says it's 1 a.m. I'm so glad you
oh my goodness.
Take out your insomnia with us.
That is incredible. I just have applause for that, for learning about workflows at 1 a.m. You're a rock star, absolute rock star, legend.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining. Thank you, Emily. You'll be hearing from us here in a follow-up email, and we just look forward to staying connected on LinkedIn with everybody. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.